There was no light, no darkness, and no direction for thought to move. The concept of distance meant nothing because there was no space to cross. Silence itself was absent because silence requires the potential for sound, and there was none. This was not emptiness. It was the absence of even emptiness. A state without contrast, where nothing could happen because happening did not yet exist. In that unimaginable stillness, the laws of nature rested in a condition of perfect balance. All that would ever become galaxies, stars, atoms, and minds was compacted into a single mathematical potential. Energy, space, and time were intertwined so tightly that no separation could yet occur. It was a universe smaller than a grain of dust, and yet heavier than thought itself could bear. Every vibration, every future interaction, every possibility waited quietly in the womb of this unbroken totality. Then, something changed. The perfect calm trembled. A fluctuation occurred, small, inevitable, and unstoppable. The universe began to expand, not into space, but as space. In less than a trillionth of a second, distances formed where none had been. Time began to tick, establishing rhythm. Every law that now defines reality unfolded like the notes of a hidden melody. The cosmos entered motion, and from that motion, the concept of moment emerged. The first instant was not explosive in the familiar sense. It was a transformation of state, from compressed energy to unfolding geometry. The temperature reached unimaginable heights. Reality was a storm of raw creation, so hot that matter itself could not yet form. Particles appeared and vanished as rapidly as thoughts within a dream. Everything was still so dense that light could not move freely. It was caught in a sea of pure energy. Yet, within that inferno, order existed. Patterns emerged at the smallest scales, tiny irregularities in the density of energy. These differences were delicate, barely measurable, but they contained the architecture for everything to come. Where the energy was slightly thicker, gravity would one day sculpt galaxies. Where it was thinner, vast cosmic voids would open. The symmetry of the beginning was perfect enough to endure, yet imperfect enough to give rise to beauty. The universe was still impossibly young, a mere flicker in time, and already it was expanding faster than light could ever hope to travel. It was a canvas stretching under invisible tension, a fabric being woven in all directions at once. The expansion carried within it a strange calm, for even as distances grew, the energy cooled, and the foundation for matter began to take shape. What had once been pure potential was becoming structure. In this infancy, time was thick, flowing differently than it does now. Every fraction of a second was filled with transformation. Forces that are now distinct: gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear strengths were still one, indistinguishable from each other. As the universe continued to stretch, they began to separate, each giving rise to its own rules, its own influence on the growing cosmos. This slow unraveling defined the first chapter of physical reality. There was no color, no sound, no light, and yet everything that would ever shimmer or hum was contained in that beginning. It was a silence filled with intent, a movement toward form. The particles that danced within it were the building blocks of existence, restless and fleeting. They collided, merged, disappeared, and reappeared, guided by laws that no mind had yet conceived. Every change that happened was irreversible. Once the flow of time began, there could be no turning back. The arrow had been set. Every subsequent moment was a continuation of this initial unfolding, each a consequence of the first tremor. The story of everything had started, not with noise or violence, but with precision, a perfectly tuned act of transformation. To think of this moment is to stand at the edge of comprehension. There was no observer to describe it, no eye to see it form, and yet every living thing would someday carry a trace of that origin. The atoms in every star, every breath, every ocean wave, all once existed as part of this first instant. The beginning was both everything and nothing, a state where stillness became motion and potential became existence. In that quiet transition, the universe took its first step toward complexity. The passage from nothingness to being was not an explosion, but a gentle expansion of possibility. The smallest fluctuation became the first heartbeat of creation, and from that pulse, reality began its endless song. In the earliest instant after the first pulse of existence, The universe was a radiant ocean of energy. The vastness that would one day hold stars and galaxies was now a microscopic storm, glowing with unimaginable intensity. Every direction was the same. There was no up, no down, only the ceaseless vibration of energy becoming form, dissolving again, and becoming form once more. In this newborn expanse, the laws of nature took their first steps, delicate and precise, as if the cosmos itself were learning to breathe. The first whisper of creation was not sound, but movement. Space expanded faster than any wave could travel, and the faint quantum tremors that rippled through the fabric of reality became the earliest expressions of structure. These tremors were tiny, subtle, yet essential. Each vibration represented a note in the hidden harmony of the universe, shaping its future form. There was no sound to carry these whispers, yet if one could translate their motion into tone, it would be the most ancient melody ever conceived, the vibration of existence itself. During this stage, energy dominated everything. The temperature soared beyond imagination, higher than any furnace a star could ever produce. The universe was filled with photons, particles of light, though none could yet travel freely. They collided endlessly with particles of matter and antimatter, which appeared and vanished in pairs, annihilating one another in brilliant flashes. For every billion such pairs, a single particle of matter survived. Those survivors would go on to build all that ever was. The faint imbalance between matter and antimatter, perhaps the smallest asymmetry in history, was enough to ensure that the universe would not fade into emptiness. As the expansion continued, the density began to fall. The chaos started to cool, not into stillness, but into a slower, more organized flow. The balance between energy and matter shifted. The forces that governed their behavior began to separate and strengthen. Gravity emerged first, faint but persistent, a quiet architect pulling at the newborn particles. The electromagnetic and nuclear forces followed, defining how the smallest pieces of matter would interact, join, and endure. It was still an age of pure potential. The fabric of space stretched endlessly, yet no structure had formed. Light existed everywhere, but could not escape its own prison of density. To human senses, such a place would appear not as fire or flame, but as brilliance too intense to perceive, a white silence without edges or center. This was the first whisper of creation, not yet the roar of stars, but a soft, pervasive hum, the quiet prelude to form. In this delicate balance, randomness and order began their eternal dialogue. Some regions of the universe grew ever so slightly denser, others more diffuse. These differences were not accidents. They were the fingerprints of quantum chance, magnified by the expansion of space. Each unevenness marked a future galaxy, a future cluster, a future home for light and life. It was as though the universe had sprinkled itself with seeds of destiny, each one invisible yet waiting to unfold over billions of years. There were no borders, no edges. Space itself was expanding everywhere at once. From any point within it, the universe would appear to be growing outward, not because there was a center, but because expansion was the nature of reality itself. Every particle felt the pull of creation, not from an external source, but from within the very geometry of space. The whisper that began in silence became a pulse, and that pulse became the rhythm of existence. As cooling continued, the high-energy symphony began to fade into softer tones. The particles that had once collided violently now began to linger. The first protons and neutrons emerged from the fire, the foundations of atomic structure. These particles were fragile in their new environment, but they endured, drawn together by the first gestures of gravity and the strong nuclear force. Though they were microscopic and scattered across the immensity of expanding space, they were the promise of matter, the promise of form. In this age, the universe had no observers, no witness to its beauty. Yet, through its behavior, it was already writing its own story, leaving faint traces of its birth in the waves of energy that filled it. These early motions would someday echo across cosmic time, becoming the background hum that scientists now listen to, the remnant warmth of the first whisper. Every flicker of that radiation carries the memory of a moment when the universe was a single, luminous breath. It is tempting to think of this phase as chaos, but in truth, it was harmony on a scale too vast to grasp. Every interaction, every annihilation, every vibration of energy played its role in establishing balance. The cosmos was becoming a self-sustaining pattern, a system governed by order yet shaped by chance. The whisper in the dark was not merely the sound of creation beginning, it was the foundation of all music, all rhythm, all continuity. When one imagines that faint hum now, it can feel peaceful, a cosmic lullaby echoing across billions of years. It speaks not of violence, but of inevitability. Out of the first pulse of energy came the first structure, and out of that structure, the first stability. Space had begun to define itself, and within its calm expansion, the potential for everything rested quietly, waiting for the right moment to awaken. In the smallest fraction of the universe's earliest instant, something extraordinary happened. From a size smaller than a particle, reality expanded faster than any speed could measure. This was not motion through space. It was space itself unfolding, multiplying in every direction, carrying with it all the energy that would one day become galaxies, stars, and minds capable of wondering where it all began. The expansion was not gentle. It was immediate, immense, and absolute. In less than a heartbeat of cosmic time, the entire universe grew from a point smaller than an atom to larger than the visible cosmos. Every inch of what would one day be space was stretched to such immensity that even the tiniest irregularities were smoothed away. It was as if creation took a deep, sudden breath, filling a void that had never existed before. This event is known as inflation. It was not driven by an explosion or any force familiar to human understanding, but by a strange, powerful energy locked within space itself. This energy acted like tension in an unseen fabric, pushing outward with relentless speed. For a brief and critical moment, it dominated everything. And then, almost as quickly as it began, it ended. What remained was a universe calm enough for matter to form, but vast enough to hold eternity within it. The speed of this inflation defies ordinary sense. Even light, which defines the cosmic limit of motion, could not have kept pace with the swelling of space. Distances doubled again and again, faster than any signal could cross them. 2 points that had once been neighbors were now separated by billions of light years. Yet, to the universe, this was effortless. There was no friction, no resistance, only pure expansion and awakening of geometry itself. Within that expansion, the seeds of structure were frozen into place. Tiny fluctuations that had existed before inflation were stretched into vast patterns, imperceptible to the eye yet written across the universe like the faintest script. These patterns would later shape the distribution of galaxies, determining where matter would gather and where voids would remain. Inflation took quantum chance and amplified it to cosmic scale, transforming randomness into destiny. The cooling began as the universe's rapid inflation ceased. The immense energy that had driven the expansion decayed into particles, flooding space with light and heat. What had once been a silent surge became a brilliant glow. Photons filled the growing universe, carrying energy and information. The cosmic temperature dropped just enough to allow new forms of matter to appear: electrons, quarks, and neutrinos, the first characters in the unfolding story of physics. Time, which had only recently begun its steady flow, now had texture. Each fraction of a second brought change. The strong nuclear force took shape, binding quarks into protons and neutrons. The electromagnetic force began to define how particles would interact. Gravity, soft yet persistent, started to pull on every bit of matter, hinting at the cosmic architecture to come. The rules of the universe were being written in motion, the great laws finding their balance in the dance of creation. From a human perspective, the idea of inflation feels impossible. To imagine the entire cosmos expanding billions of times its size in less than a blink is to reach beyond reason. Yet this unimaginable event explains the universe's remarkable smoothness. No matter where one looks, the cosmic background appears uniform, the same temperature, the same balance of energy. Inflation accounts for that perfection, for it stretched every unevenness into harmony. The cosmos became vast, connected, and beautifully ordered. The forces that drove inflation remain mysterious. Scientists describe it as a field, an invisible ocean of potential that once filled space. When this field released its stored energy, The result was expansion on an unimaginable scale. It was the ultimate transformation of potential into presence. And though inflation lasted for only a fleeting moment, its consequences endure in every corner of the universe. Imagine standing at the center of that awakening. Though there was no center to stand upon, the expansion would not have looked like an explosion. There would be no outward rush, no boundary to cross. Every point would experience the same stretching, every direction equally infinite. It would be serene in its violence, graceful in its speed, a cosmic bloom unfolding in perfect symmetry. As the universe expanded, it carried within it the essence of calm that would later allow stars to form. The violent acceleration gave way to gentler rhythms. Space became vast enough for matter to settle and interact. The heat began to ease, and in that cooling, structure found room to breathe. Inflation had sculpted the stage upon which all future complexity would play its part. This was the universe's awakening, the instant when nothing became everything and silence became motion. The inflationary era ended as quietly as it began, but its mark remained eternal. Every galaxy, every atom, every distant world traces its existence back to that moment of sudden expansion. The Great Awakening was both the birth of space and the beginning of the cosmic calm that still stretches endlessly, carrying the echo of that first breath through every corner of creation. When the rapid expansion began to ease, the universe was still unimaginably hot. Temperatures reached into the trillions, and every inch of existence shimmered with energy so fierce that no solid form could endure. It was a sea of pure radiation, a storm of particles and light tangled together in a glowing web. The young cosmos was not yet dark or empty. It blazed with brilliance, its light unable to travel far before being scattered again and again by the dense fog of matter. In this radiant ocean, every particle was in constant motion. Photons crashed into electrons, electrons collided with protons, and energy flashed endlessly between them. The universe at this stage was less like a place and more like a continuous vibration, a living sound made of heat. If it could be heard, it would be a low, endless hum, the harmony of energy giving birth to matter. Within this furious light, the first elements of order began to appear. The simplest building blocks, quarks, started to bind together under the strong nuclear force, forming protons and neutrons. Each one was a miracle of stability, a tiny island in a boiling sea. As they formed, the universe grew slightly calmer, the chaos becoming more structured, the energy more evenly distributed. This was the first great act of organization, the transformation of raw energy into tangible form. The balance of forces was delicate beyond comprehension. The strength of gravity, the power of electromagnetism, the speed of expansion, each was tuned so precisely that even the smallest deviation would have erased the possibility of stars, planets, or life. Yet here, in the universe's infancy, the balance held. It was as if nature had discovered a perfect rhythm, one that would allow complexity to arise from simplicity. For the next few minutes, this harmony played out as a cosmic symphony of creation. The universe continued to cool, dropping below 1 billion degrees, and in that cooling, something astonishing happened. Protons and neutrons began to fuse. Under immense heat and density, they joined to form the first atomic nuclei. Hydrogen appeared first, then helium, and traces of lithium. The process was brief, lasting only moments, but it produced the lightest elements that would later fuel stars and form the foundations of everything solid. Each fusion released energy, a note in the grand orchestra of the early cosmos. The universe was still filled with fire, yet the energy of creation had started to settle into recognizable patterns. It was no longer a featureless glare, but a living structure of light and matter, expanding and cooling in tandem. The radiation that once trapped every photon began to thin, slowly allowing the cosmos to breathe. This was the era when light and matter danced together in perfect balance. Every photon carried the imprint of its last encounter, weaving a story into the very fabric of space. These photons would one day become the soft glow still seen across the night sky, the faint afterlight of the Big Bang itself. But for now, they remained captive, scattering endlessly through the dense fog, their brilliance hidden within the fire. As cooling continued, the speed of interaction slowed. The universe's density decreased, and the expansion allowed particles to drift farther apart. This created space for new possibilities. Gravity, faint but relentless, began to gather matter into tiny concentrations, planting the seeds for galaxies that would not appear for billions of years. Yet even now, the balance between attraction and expansion remained exquisite. The cosmos expanded fast enough to avoid collapsing, yet slow enough to allow structure to form. If one could witness this moment, it would not appear violent. The light would be so bright, so pervasive, that it would feel serene, like standing within a star, surrounded by energy too vast to comprehend. The fire was fierce, but it was also peaceful in its inevitability. Each reaction, each spark of creation, unfolded according to laws that had just come into being. The universe was composing itself, turning chaos into melody. This symphony of light and fire marked the beginning of identity in the cosmos. The particles that formed during this age would persist for billions of years, combining and recombining, shaping stars, worlds, and life itself. Every atom in every living being once participated in that blazing harmony. The heat that filled the universe then still echoes now in the faint warmth of the cosmic background, a whisper of the first song ever played. Eventually, the density became too low for fusion to continue. The fire of creation dimmed, and the universe entered a quieter phase. The light did not disappear, it spread. It filled the growing space, expanding with it, cooling with it, transforming from blinding brilliance into a soft radiance. The great symphony that began in the first seconds did not end, it simply slowed, its notes stretching across time until they became the gentle hum of existence itself. The birth of light was not only a physical event, but a transition from simplicity to structure. In the interplay of radiation and matter, the universe learned the art of balance. It was still young, still wild, but no longer chaotic. From the energy of its beginning came the calm needed for the future, a calm that would one day cradle stars, galaxies, and the slow rise of thought that could look back upon this age and call it beautiful. As the fiery music of creation began to fade, the universe entered its first quiet act. The wild heat that once burned brighter than imagination began to soften. Energy that had once been pure chaos now drifted gently through expanding space. For the first time, the cosmos began to cool, not as something dying, but as something settling, like a great ocean after a storm. Cooling changed everything. The universe had been dense, a fog of light and matter too thick for any photon to travel freely. Every beam of radiation was trapped in endless collisions, bouncing between charged particles, unable to escape. But as space continued to stretch, the density fell. The once blinding energy dispersed across a growing canvas, and temperature dropped steadily. What had once been a roaring inferno became a glowing mist, calm yet filled with potential. At around 380,000 years after the beginning, the cooling reached a crucial threshold. The temperature fell to about 3,000 degrees, still hotter than the surface of most stars, yet cool enough for the first stable atoms to form. Electrons, long separated by the heat, finally joined with protons and helium nuclei, creating hydrogen and helium atoms. This moment marked a turning point known as recombination. With electrons now bound into atoms, light no longer scattered endlessly. Photons could finally travel freely through space. For the first time, the universe became transparent. The glow that had been trapped within it was released, flooding the cosmos with light that would continue to travel forever. What had been a sea of blinding opacity became a vast expanse, illuminated by its own memory. This release of light still lingers today, faint and ancient, stretched across the sky, as the cosmic microwave background, a soft echo of the universe's first visible moment. The cooling was not merely a drop in temperature, it was the beginning of clarity. The fog lifted, and space itself opened into something more serene. Atoms drifted freely, no longer torn apart by the violence of heat. The once blazing radiation faded into a gentle glow, invisible to the human eye, but forever present. The universe, still expanding, had become calm enough for gravity to begin its subtle work. Within this new stillness, tiny variations in density, the same fluctuations that inflation had magnified, began to guide matter into clumps. These faint irregularities, so small at first, became the seeds of structure. hydrogen gas collected in invisible streams, pulled together by the quiet insistence of gravity. Over millions of years, these clouds would grow dense enough to ignite the first stars. But for now, the universe was dim and tranquil, filled with drifting gas and invisible radiation, a cosmic dusk before the dawn of light. The temperature continued to fall, space expanded ever outward, carrying light with it. As the photons stretched, their wavelengths grew longer, their energy softer. What had once been brilliant fire became a cool whisper. The color of the universe shifted from white to red to darkness, leaving behind only warmth. The cosmos was no longer blinding, it was resting, like an ember cooling after the first burst of flame. This period of cooling, though calm, was not empty. It was filled with purpose, with the quiet preparation for what would come next. Hydrogen and helium, the simplest of elements, floated through the dark, filling every corner of existence. They were patient, waiting for the pull of gravity to gather them into shapes. The fire had ended, but in its ashes lay the ingredients for creation. The balance that emerged during this time defined the fate of everything that would follow. If the universe had expanded too quickly, gravity would never have had time to form stars. If it had expanded too slowly, it would have collapsed back into itself. But the balance was perfect, a precise harmony between expansion and attraction, between energy and matter. This quiet equilibrium allowed structure to emerge gently, not in chaos but in rhythm. It is strange to imagine a time when the universe glowed softly, a warm mist stretching endlessly. There were no stars, no planets, no galaxies, only light and gas, suspended in slow motion. Yet in that simplicity, everything necessary for life was already there. The atoms of hydrogen drifting through that stillness would one day fuse in the hearts of stars, forming carbon, oxygen, and the heavier elements that would make oceans, trees, and thought itself. The cooling of the universe was the beginning of patience. It was the first long pause in cosmic history, a time when energy learned restraint and structure began its slow formation. The cosmos was no longer a violent explosion of heat, but a place of quiet becoming. It was the transition from chaos to balance, from brilliance to beauty. In the silence that followed the fading fire, the universe took its first deep breath. Light, now free, wandered into the vastness. Matter drifted, weightless and waiting. The story of creation was far from over. It had only changed its tone. The music of the beginning slowed into something softer, a cosmic lullaby, played across an expanding sky, inviting the first stars to dream themselves into being. Long after the early fire had cooled and the bright fog had cleared, the universe entered a vast and silent interval. The energy of creation had faded into stillness, and the glow that once filled all of space dimmed into near darkness. For millions of years, there were no stars to light the void. The universe was transparent now, but empty of shape. This age is sometimes called the cosmic dark, and in its quiet, the simplest forms of matter drifted hydrogen and helium, the first atoms ever to exist. Each atom was a survivor of that ancient fire. The protons and neutrons that formed their hearts were forged during the first seconds of existence. Their electrons had finally found them as the universe cooled. Together they became stable, small, and eternal. These atoms were the first tangible things, the first pieces of reality that could endure through time. Though invisible to the eye, their presence filled the cosmos, like dust motes suspended in infinite stillness. The formation of atoms changed the texture of the universe. Before, radiation had ruled everything, scattering endlessly. Now, matter was free to move on its own. Gravity could begin to shape it, drawing atoms together into gentle streams, forming enormous, unseen clouds. There was no color, no sound, only the silent choreography of particles drifting toward one another across unimaginable distances. This was the true beginning of structure. The gas that filled the universe was thin and evenly spread, but not perfectly so. The faint irregularities from the first expansion, amplified by inflation, had left subtle fingerprints on the distribution of matter. Where the gas was slightly denser, gravity gathered more mass. Where it was lighter, space remained empty. Over time, this invisible map would become the framework for galaxies. For hundreds of millions of years, The cosmos existed in quiet suspension. There was no movement that the human eye could have perceived, no flash of light to mark its progress. Yet in this stillness, something was unfolding with immense patience. Tiny ripples of gravity deepened, pulling atoms together with slow inevitability. Vast regions of space, each spanning light years, began to collapse inward. The airless darkness grew heavy with invisible pressure. The atoms themselves were remarkably simple. Hydrogen, the lightest element, was a single proton wrapped by one electron. Helium, slightly more complex, contained two of each. These were the building blocks of the future, the raw material from which all other elements would someday emerge. But in this young universe, their simplicity was their strength. They could persist in the vacuum, unchanged, waiting for gravity to awaken them into motion. As the ages passed, gravity continued its subtle pull. The clouds of gas grew denser at their centers, their outer edges collapsing inward under their own weight. Temperature began to rise within these invisible cocoons. Motion replaced stillness. The atoms, once free and drifting, now collided, pressing together with greater frequency. Energy began to return, not from chaos, but from compression. The universe, which had cooled and rested, was preparing for its next act, the birth of light anew. Within these gathering clouds, something delicate occurred. Hydrogen atoms collided with such force that their electrons were stripped away, turning the centers of the clouds into glowing spheres of plasma. Pressure and heat continued to build until a threshold was crossed. Atoms fused, and light was born again. The first stars had ignited, but this was still far in the future from the moment we now observe, when the universe was made only of atoms, dark and waiting. The formation of the first atoms was a silent revolution. It marked the end of chaos and the beginning of matter's persistence. Every structure that would follow every mountain, ocean, and heartbeat depended on this moment of stability. The universe had found its foundation. The wild energies of its birth had settled into form, and those forms could now respond to gravity, could gather, could create. Even in its quietness, this period was not truly empty. Faint light from the residual glow of the Big Bang still moved across space, now stretched into invisible wavelengths. It was a gentle background warmth, filling the universe evenly. If one could have drifted through it, there would be no color or sound, only the soft pressure of radiation that once burned with creation's flame. It was peace in motion, the cosmos resting in its own breath. The atoms drifting through that early darkness carried within them the potential for everything beautiful and strange. Each hydrogen atom could one day fuse in a star's heart, producing helium and releasing light. Each helium atom might later merge into carbon, the core of living chemistry. In the simplest of elements lay the promise of complexity. The quiet expansion of the universe was not emptiness, but preparation, awaiting calm before the rise of light, the slow gathering of cosmic dawn. This was the era when stillness became fertile. The universe had learned to endure, to hold its form. Its heat had faded, but its purpose had not. The gas clouds drifting through the infinite dark were the unborn stars of all future nights. Though they shone with no light, they contained all that would ever shine. The first atoms had formed, and through their presence, the universe had entered a new kind of peace, one that held within it the promise of awakening. The faint light that escaped when the first atoms formed did not vanish into darkness. It continued to travel, endlessly stretching with the expansion of space. What began as a warm, golden glow slowly softened over billions of years, its waves lengthening, its energy fading, until it became invisible to human eyes. This ancient radiation still fills the entire cosmos, uniform and quiet, like a soft hum woven through reality itself. It is the oldest light that exists, the afterglow of creation, known as the cosmic microwave background. This light is not bright, but it is everywhere. It drifts through every room, every breath of air, every corner of night. The universe, once brilliant with heat and fire, has cooled to a temperature just a few degrees above absolute zero. Yet this faint radiation persists, the remnant warmth of the Big Bang still echoing across time. To the unaided senses, it feels like silence, but when translated into energy, it becomes music, a cosmic background note that plays continuously, even now. Each photon of this ancient light carries a message. Its journey began nearly 14 billion years ago when the universe first became transparent. Since then, it has traveled unhindered through expanding space, stretched and cooled but never lost. Scientists who study it describe its spectrum as astonishingly, even the same temperature in every direction, differing by only tiny fractions. These delicate variations, barely measurable, are the fingerprints of the universe's earliest structure. When telescopes tuned to microwaves began to map this glow, a hidden pattern emerged. The faint irregularities recorded in that light corresponded to the tiny fluctuations in density that once filled the newborn universe. Where the glow was slightly warmer, matter had been slightly denser. Where it was cooler, matter had been thinner. These subtle patterns were the seeds of everything: galaxies, stars, planets, and eventually, living minds capable of seeing this light and understanding its meaning. In the calm uniformity of the microwave sky lies profound information. It tells the story of how energy became structure, how stillness turned to motion, and how the cosmos grew from simplicity to complexity. The variations are minute, 1 part in 100,000, yet from them arose all the richness of the visible universe. Every cluster of galaxies, every spiral of stars, owes its existence to those first delicate imbalances recorded in the ancient glow. The microwave background is often called the oldest photograph of the universe. It captures the cosmos as it was when it was only a few 100,000 years old, an infant, glowing softly, filled with potential. Unlike the stars that flicker and fade, this light does not come from individual objects but from the universe itself. It is the echo of the moment when light and matter parted ways, when photons began their long, uninterrupted voyage through space and time. Even now, as it continues to cool, this ancient light serves as a memory, a living archive of the beginning. It proves that the universe was once hot, dense, and expanding, a truth written not in myth but in radiation itself. When radio receivers on Earth first detected it, the discovery seemed almost accidental. What sounded like background noise was, in fact, the sound of the cosmos remembering its birth. The faint hiss of that radiation carried across space for nearly 14 billion years before it reached human ears. The beauty of this light is in its persistence. It has no direction, no origin point to trace, for it comes equally from everywhere. It does not belong to any star or galaxy. It is the shared heartbeat of existence, the lingering warmth of the beginning still whispering through the night. To tune into it is to listen to the memory of creation itself, a music that has never stopped playing. In a way, the universe still sings. The temperature fluctuations in the microwave sky are like notes in a cosmic chord, the vibrations of sound waves that once rippled through the hot plasma of the early universe. These waves, called baryon acoustic oscillations, were pressure ripples moving through the primordial gas before atoms formed. They shaped the large-scale structure of the cosmos, leaving their rhythm imprinted in the pattern of galaxies that exist today. The very structure of the heavens is a frozen echo of that original resonance. If one could translate the cosmic microwave background into audible sound, it would not roar or thunder. It would be a low, resonant hum, deep, steady, and endless. Its tone would be softer than wind and older than stars. It would sound like time itself breathing, like the gentle vibration of existence still expanding. Every human who looks up at the night sky is surrounded by this ancient light. Though it cannot be seen, it seeps through everything, a quiet companion to all that exists. The microwave background is the universe's lullaby, the final note of its first great song, still drifting through space, still glowing with the memory of creation. When the first light began to drift freely across the cosmos, gravity quietly took its place as the patient artist of creation. It had always been present, subtle yet absolute, guiding every particle since the universe's first breath. But now, as the universe cooled and atoms floated unbound through the expanding darkness, gravity emerged as the great shaper, a force without voice, without flame, but with infinite persistence. Gravity has no color, no sound, no visible form. It does not burn or flash. It simply bends the paths of things, pulling them gently toward one another. While radiation spread outward, Losing strength, gravity worked inward, gathering. Every hydrogen atom, every particle of helium felt its influence. It was the softest force compared to the others, weaker than electromagnetism, weaker than the nuclear bonds that hold atoms together, and yet, in the vastness of space, its reach was endless. It did not fade with time. It only waited, patient and constant, for structure to form. The early universe was still uniform, a sea of atoms floating in a faint haze of ancient light. But within that stillness lay faint imperfections, tiny pockets where matter was just slightly denser. Gravity began to notice those differences. It pulled gently, ever so slightly, drawing atoms toward the places where others had already gathered. Over millions of years, those small clumps grew heavier. Matter pulled in more matter, and what began as a whisper of imbalance became the first movement towards structure. The universe had no edges, no fixed points, yet gravity gave it definition, turning randomness into design. Invisible filaments of gas began to stretch across space, connecting dense regions like threads of silk. These were the first outlines of what would become the cosmic web, an immense pattern of clusters, filaments, and voids that would shape the architecture of galaxies. The universe was learning to build itself, guided only by attraction, by the slow choreography of gravity's unseen hand. Everywhere, the same pattern repeated. Tiny fluctuations grew, amplified by time. Hydrogen clouds coalesced, forming larger and larger masses. The process was slow, almost imperceptible on a human timescale, yet unstoppable. Where density increased, temperature rose. Where temperature rose, pressure pushed outward, balancing gravity's inward pull. This eternal dance between contraction and resistance gave the cosmos its first rhythm, not a fiery outburst, but a deep and steady pulse. It was during this quiet labor that the foundations for the first stars were laid. Within certain clouds, gravity became strong enough to overcome all opposition. The gas within these pockets compressed, heating as it fell inward. At their centers, matter grew dense enough to ignite nuclear fusion, releasing light for the first time since the early glow of creation. The birth of stars was gravity's masterpiece, a transformation of darkness into brilliance, achieved not through violence, but through patience. Gravity worked without rush, sculpting across billions of years. It cared nothing for scale. The same law that drew grains of dust together also guided the motion of galaxies. It curved the path of light, bent time itself, and stitched the cosmos into a single coherent whole. Every cluster of stars, every orbiting world, every drifting comet is the result of its design. The universe's beauty, its spirals, its orbits, its cycles, is written in gravity's quiet mathematics. Its influence extended even to the fabric of time. Where mass gathered, time slowed. Where space was empty, it stretched. The universe did not simply expand, it bent, rippled, and curved under gravity's steady weight. This gentle sculptor not only shaped what could be seen, but the invisible geometry of existence itself. It gave the cosmos texture and rhythm, ensuring that motion and stillness could coexist in balance. Over immense epochs, the interplay of gravity and expansion created the universe's grand contrast, clusters of matter surrounded by vast voids of near-nothingness. These empty spaces are not mistakes, they are part of the harmony, allowing galaxies to form and light to travel freely. The universe, once formless, now had structure, depth, and resonance. Gravity had turned the silence of creation into architecture. Though unseen, its presence can be felt in every breath of existence. The same force that binds stars into galaxies holds oceans to planets and hearts to the ground. It is both cosmic and intimate, the bridge between the smallest particle and the largest cluster of galaxies. Every sunrise, every falling leaf, every orbit of a distant world is an echo of that same force that once shaped the first stars from formless clouds. Gravity is not a destroyer, though it can collapse worlds and crush stars. It is a teacher of balance. It reminds the universe to gather even as it expands, to form patterns amid vastness, to find harmony between motion and rest. Its work is never finished. Even now, it continues to weave galaxies, to pull on light, to hold the fabric of space in quiet tension. The cosmos, as it appears today, vast, luminous, intricate, is the result of gravity's endless patience. Its artistry is slow but eternal. Through its invisible touch, chaos became order and emptiness became form. The gentle sculptor continues its silent work, turning the universe into a masterpiece of curves and motion, a creation of breathtaking symmetry built entirely from stillness and pull. The darkness that followed the cooling of the early universe was deep and absolute. For hundreds of millions of years, no point of light broke the silence. Yet within that cosmic dusk, the invisible work of gravity continued. Hydrogen and helium, drifting gently since their creation, began to gather into vast clouds. Within these growing structures, matter thickened, warmed, and slowly prepared for the most transformative event since the birth of time itself. As these clouds collapsed under their own weight, their hearts began to compress. Temperature rose quietly in the centers, pressure increased, and motion quickened. The gas, once peaceful and diffuse, started to glow faintly. Each atom collided with another, surrendering a fragment of energy, and that energy built upon itself. The first star was not born with a spark or an explosion. It emerged gradually, the result of relentless compression, the universe's first act of fire after eons of stillness. The process was elegant in its simplicity. Hydrogen atoms, the most basic form of matter, fused under immense pressure. When their nuclei combined, they released light. This fusion produced energy so vast that it countered gravity's inward pull, creating a stable balance, the heartbeat of a star. For the first time, darkness was broken by brilliance. The black expanse, once silent, now shimmered with the earliest starlight, faint and blue-white, shining across young space. These first stars were not like those of later ages. They were enormous, hundreds of times the mass of the sun, and burned with extraordinary intensity. Their lives were brief, lasting only a few million years, but during that short span, they transformed everything around them. Their light reionized the surrounding hydrogen gas, turning the universe transparent once more. Their radiation sculpted space, creating the first pockets of clarity, the first true night sky. Each star became a furnace of creation. Within their cores, new elements were born: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and the heavier atoms that would one day form worlds and life. Every star was both a beacon and a crucible, converting simplicity into complexity, turning hydrogen into the seeds of all future chemistry. When these massive stars exhausted their fuel, they collapsed and exploded, scattering their newly forged elements into space. The universe began to change its composition. The purity of its early atoms gave way to richness. This cycle of birth and death marked the first great renewal. The explosions of the earliest stars' supernovae were magnificent in scale. They tore through the surrounding clouds, spreading the products of fusion across vast distances. In the wake of each burst, new clouds formed, now enriched with the ingredients for more diverse stars and, eventually, planets. The cosmos had learned to recycle itself, to evolve through destruction and creation. The light from those first stars was faint by the time it reached the farthest edges of space, but it filled the universe with purpose. Each glimmer pierced the endless dark, signaling that the age of illumination had begun. The black ocean of the cosmos was now dotted with points of fire, each one a promise that the universe could build, could sustain, could dream. The period when these stars emerged is known as the cosmic dawn. It was not a sudden event, but a gradual blossoming. Across billions of light years, countless stars were born in near unison, igniting like embers across a cosmic sea. The darkness receded slowly, replaced by soft radiance spreading through intergalactic clouds. It was as though the universe had opened its eyes for the first time. From the light of those first stars, the universe gained structure and depth. Their gravity began to draw other stars together, forming clusters the earliest outlines of galaxies. These primitive galaxies were irregular, chaotic, and small, yet they marked the beginning of cosmic architecture. Over time, their merging and interaction would create the grand spirals and vast ellipticals that now fill the night sky. Each flicker of light carried within it the story of balance, the struggle between gravity and radiation, between creation and collapse. The first stars lived fast and burned fiercely. But their deaths were not endings. They became the means by which the universe diversified, spreading the materials for future generations of stars and worlds. Every carbon atom, every trace of oxygen in a human breath, was once part of a star that lived and died in this early era. If one could have stood on an ancient world during this time, the sky would have been extraordinary. Thousands of brilliant blue giants would have lit the heavens, each radiating power far beyond the sun's. The darkness between them would shimmer faintly from scattered gas, illuminated by their glow. Space itself would have seemed alive, not quiet, but breathing with light. The birth of the first stars was the universe's second awakening. It was the moment when energy once again became radiance, when the silence of the early cosmos transformed into brilliance. The cold hydrogen clouds of the Dark Ages had learned to burn. From this awakening came all light, every sunrise, every spark, every flame that would ever exist. The stars that first shone have long since vanished, their light traveling endlessly through space. Yet their legacy remains in every atom, every element, every breath. They were the first storytellers of the cosmos, writing their brilliance across the void. Through them, the universe learned not only how to shine, but how to remember. The first stars, scattered across the young universe, did not remain isolated for long. Their light traveled through darkness, crossing vast oceans of hydrogen gas, but gravity continued its quiet orchestration beneath the surface. Wherever clusters of stars formed, gravity linked them together, weaving them into larger and larger structures. Slowly, from chaos, the first galaxies began to emerge, immense islands of light suspended in the deep cosmic sea. Each galaxy began as a dense pocket within the invisible web of matter that stretched across space. Gravity pulled stars, gas, and dust inward, binding them into swirling systems. The earliest galaxies were small and irregular, fragile compared to the grand spirals of the modern universe. Yet within their chaotic forms, a kind of harmony was taking shape. The first galaxies were the laboratories of creation where matter learned to organize itself into beauty. As these young galaxies grew, they collided and merged. Each encounter reshaped them, redistributing stars and gas, altering their orbits, and triggering new waves of star formation. The collisions were not violent in the way of explosions, but rather vast cosmic dances, unfolding over millions of years. Out of their turbulence, new order emerged. Some galaxies took on graceful spiral arms, others became massive elliptical clouds, glowing with the light of billions of stars. Within these galaxies, the cycle of creation deepened. The first generation of stars had lived and died quickly, seeding their surroundings with heavier elements. The gas clouds enriched by their remains cooled more efficiently, allowing smaller, longer-lived stars to form. Around these new suns, planets would one day take shape. The galaxies became the nurseries of time vast, spinning ecosystems of light and matter, birth and decay. The forces at work were delicate but immense. Gravity drew matter together, rotation provided balance. As the galaxies turned, their movement created stability, preventing collapse while maintaining cohesion. Each one spun like a celestial whirlpool, a slow, steady motion that would endure for billions of years. In this balance of attraction and momentum, the universe discovered a new kind of peace motion sustained without end. At the heart of many young galaxies, unseen giants began to form. Enormous black holes, millions of times the mass of the Sun, gathered the matter that fell too close to escape. Around them, swirling disks of gas blazed with radiation as they spiraled inward, creating beacons of incredible brightness known as quasars. These radiant hearts illuminated the darkness between galaxies, outshining entire star systems. They marked the power and mystery that lay within the universe's architecture, creation and destruction intertwined at its core. Each galaxy was a reflection of cosmic memory, shaped by its own unique history of formation and collision. Some grew large and majestic. Others remained small and faint, scattered like forgotten notes in a vast symphony. Together, they formed a cosmic tapestry, billions of luminous islands separated by immense voids. Yet none of them stood still. The universe continued to expand, stretching the distance between galaxies, even as gravity bound their interiors tightly together. The light from those first galaxies still travels through space today, reaching modern telescopes after more than 13 billion years. Seen from Earth, they appear as faint smudges, soft glows at the edge of vision. But each of those distant flickers contains billions of suns, each sun surrounded by worlds, each world a possibility. To look at them is to gaze back into time itself, to witness the moment when the universe learned to compose itself in vast, self-sustaining patterns. The formation of galaxies marked a turning point in cosmic history. No longer was the universe a uniform sea of gas and light. It had become textured, filled with structure and motion. Galaxies served as containers for time, preserving the stories of stars within their orbits. Every new generation of stars inherited the ashes of the ones before, continuing the great cycle of transformation. Matter was no longer random, it was evolving, organizing, learning how to sustain itself through change. These galaxies would go on to shape the fate of the cosmos. Their clustering defined the large-scale geometry of the universe. Their collisions sculpted the forms we see today, the elegant spirals, the glowing halos, the faint filaments of gas stretching between them. They were not merely structures, they were living systems, growing and transforming across billions of years. If one could drift within one of those ancient galaxies, it would feel like floating inside a storm of light. Stars would fill every horizon, their glow blending into a golden haze. Nebulae would shimmer with color, pinks, blues, and purples formed by glowing gases and newborn suns. The darkness between them would not be empty, but full of quiet motion, each particle tracing an orbit written by gravity's steady hand. These galaxies were the universe's first great works of art, vast, self-sustaining forms born from patience and motion. Each one was a promise that order could emerge from chaos, that beauty could rise from simplicity. They turned the blankness of space into something alive, a cosmic landscape painted with light. The birth of galaxies was not the end of creation, but the beginning of its refinement. Within them, stars continued to form and die, scattering heavier elements, enriching their surroundings. The cycle of existence formation, transformation, renewal became eternal. Galaxies became both womb and grave, ever creating, ever dissolving, carrying forward the story that began in the first breath of time. Every galaxy, from the smallest dwarf to the grandest spiral, carries the same truth. It is a memory of the universe's unfolding, a reflection of its patience and design. Each one is an island of becoming, still drifting through the cosmic sea, still expanding with the universe, still singing the quiet hymn of creation. As galaxies multiplied and spread through the deepening universe, their arrangement was not random. Beneath the glow of stars, something greater was taking shape, a hidden structure connecting everything, invisible yet immense. It was not a pattern written in light, but in gravity. Across the expanding void, matter began to trace an intricate lattice, a cosmic web stretching from one horizon to another, weaving galaxies into threads, clusters, and vast empty spaces in between. This was the next great transformation of the cosmos, the emergence of structure on a scale beyond comprehension. Where gravity had once sculpted stars and galaxies, it now shaped the universe itself. Every cluster of galaxies was a knot in this vast tapestry, connected to others by filaments of dark matter and gas. Between them, voids opened regions of near-nothingness, so immense that entire galaxies could drift through them without ever meeting another. The web was not born from chaos, but from the faint variations left in the early universe. Those slight differences in density, amplified by time and gravity, created an architecture that defined how galaxies would form and where they would gather. In this way, the cosmos became organized, though no mind had designed it. The universe had written its own map, a structure made not of walls or edges, but of relationships, invisible links connecting every shining island of stars. The filaments that formed this structure stretched for hundreds of millions of light years. Along their lengths, galaxies flowed like rivers of light, moving under the gentle pull of gravity. The dark matter that made up most of the web was unseen, detectable only by its influence. It provided the skeleton upon which the luminous matter, the stars, the nebulae, the galaxies could gather and take form. Though humanity would never see dark matter directly, it shaped everything that could ever be seen. Within this cosmic network, Gravity worked in harmony with expansion. While the universe continued to stretch outward, the web held its shape, a balance between motion and cohesion. Galaxies did not fly apart into chaos. They moved along the filaments, guided by the unseen geometry of the cosmos. It was a dynamic stillness, an order held in motion, the universe breathing in quiet rhythm. If one could step back far enough to view it all, the sight would be breathtaking. Imagine a vast sphere of space, glowing faintly with scattered galaxies, each connected to the next by delicate filaments of light. It would resemble a living organism, veins and arteries glowing against the darkness, pulsing with energy. The same mathematical patterns found in neural networks, river deltas, and the branching of trees would echo here, across a scale far beyond imagination. The universe was not random, it was self-similar, recursive, alive with structure. Over billions of years, this web continued to evolve. Filaments thickened as galaxies merged and clusters grew heavier. The knots of the web became massive cities of stars, glowing brighter as gravity drew them together. The spaces between them, the cosmic voids, grew larger, silent regions expanding faster than the structures themselves. The contrast deepened, brilliance surrounded by vast darkness. Creation balanced by emptiness. The web was not static. Within its filaments, galaxies collided and coalesced. Their interactions triggered new waves of star formation, filling the universe with fresh light. The hydrogen gas that flowed along these filaments fed the galaxies like streams, nourishing roots, sustaining their growth. In this way, the cosmic web acted as both framework and lifeline, the structure that fed the expansion of light. Though invisible to the naked eye, traces of the web can be seen in the way galaxies align, in the subtle gravitational lensing of distant light, and in the background radiation that still echoes from the beginning. Every telescope that peers into the depths of the universe, every survey that maps the positions of galaxies, reveals more of this grand pattern. The more the cosmos is observed, the clearer its design becomes, a network of light and shadow, sculpted by gravity's timeless hand. Within the filaments, new galaxies continued to form, the cold gas flowing through them condensed into stars, planets, and all that would one day observe itself. The universe was still young in its purpose, but old in its motion. The cosmic web gave it a backbone, a way to grow while maintaining harmony. Every point of light that would ever exist was connected to this structure, bound not by proximity, but by geometry, by the shared history of gravity's pull. To imagine this web is to understand the unity of all things. No galaxy exists alone. Every cluster, every world, every star is part of the same vast structure, drawn from the same beginning, guided by the same laws. The cosmic web is not only a pattern of matter, it is a reflection of connection itself, the physical manifestation of interdependence, written across space and time. Even now, billions of years later, the web continues to evolve. Its filaments grow more defined, its voids more pronounced. The balance between light and emptiness endures, reminding the universe that beauty is born not only from what is seen but from what holds it together. The cosmic web remains the great unseen cathedral of existence, a structure so vast that every spark of light, every particle of matter, every being capable of wonder is part of its eternal design. In the early universe, before stars matured and galaxies settled into rhythm, time did not flow as it does in the world of living beings. It was stretched, curved, and pliable, a quality of the universe itself rather than a separate dimension. Each new concentration of matter bent it slightly, each growing galaxy slowed it, each void let it move more freely. Time was not universal but local, changing with gravity's quiet hand. It had begun as a singular pulse, but now it learned to move with grace, like a river finding its course through a young and restless world. At first, there were no days, no seasons, no measures to divide one moment from another. Time existed only as change, expansion, cooling, motion. Stars began to define it, their birth and death giving shape to its rhythm. The universe was learning its tempo. The glow of starlight became the first measure of duration, each fusion reaction a clock ticking quietly within the vastness. The flow of time gained direction, not from external cause, but from the deep physics of entropy, the tendency of energy to spread, of order to soften. It was the universe's own way of keeping memory. As galaxies grew older, time began to stretch across scales. Within stars, it passed in furious seconds, as nuclear fires consumed their fuel. Within galaxies, it flowed slowly, measured by the graceful orbits of billions of suns. Across the expanding universe, it unfolded like an endless canvas, each moment layered upon the next, never repeating. Time was both the artist and the medium, invisible, yet shaping all things. Einstein would one day reveal that time was not separate from space, but part of a single, flexible fabric. The flow of time could bend, twist, and slow, depending on the gravity of what it passed near. A clock on a mountain would tick differently from one deep in a valley. A clock near a star would age slower than one far away. In the great web of galaxies, time was not a single thread, but a tapestry of many strands, each woven by the local shape of reality. But in those early eons, no observer marked its passing. There was only motion, silent and perfect. The stars burned without witness. The galaxies drifted in their paths. Time moved forward, not because it was told to, but because the universe had direction. It was the natural unfolding of cause and effect, energy becoming structure, structure becoming complexity, complexity becoming awareness. As the first planetary systems formed around the new stars, time began to acquire meaning. The spinning of worlds created cycles, days and nights, seasons and years. Gravity shaped orbits into reliable patterns, and those patterns became the universe's first clocks. The cosmos was now capable of repetition, of rhythm. The language of time had found symbols: sunrise, eclipse, orbit, decay. The arrow of time, though subtle, was absolute. It pointed one way toward change, toward the spreading of energy, toward the future. Entropy was the hidden current beneath all things, ensuring that no moment could ever be repeated. The universe was learning to forget, even as it created. Each second that passed carried information away into heat, into radiation, into the untraceable drift of light through infinite distance. Memory became rare, meaning precious. Yet this flow of time also gave the cosmos continuity. Through it, patterns could evolve. Stars could be born, live, and die. Galaxies could merge and transform. Matter could learn to organize itself into life. Without time's forward motion, there would be no growth, no aging, no story. The same arrow that leads to decay also makes creation possible. Every birth in the universe is balanced by an eventual return to stillness, and in that cycle, time finds its harmony. If one could drift through the universe in those early epochs, one might not sense the passage of time at all. The motions of galaxies would be glacial, the glow of stars almost unchanging, but the flow would be there, subtle yet persistent, the same current that still moves through every atom, every cell, every thought. Time was not something added to the universe. It was the universe becoming aware of its own unfolding. The geometry of space-time, shaped by gravity, determined how that flow felt in every region. In dense clusters of galaxies, time slowed slightly, stretched by the curvature of space. In vast cosmic voids, where matter was sparse, it ran a little faster. Across the whole of the universe, these differences were small, but they gave reality texture. Time was not flat or uniform, it had depth, contour and motion, like a cosmic tide rolling through eternity. Eventually, as stars lived and died, as elements cycled through generations of worlds, time became a canvas for complexity. Life, fragile, self-replicating, conscious of its own impermanence, would one day emerge from this flow, learning to measure it, to name it, to fear and cherish it. But even in the age before life, time already held the seeds of awareness. It was the slow awakening of the cosmos, the gradual discovery that change itself was beautiful. In the end, the universe's flow of time was not a mere dimension, it was a narrative. Every galaxy, every atom, every beam of light was a line in its story. The river of time was not rushing forward blindly, it was composing, weaving, shaping the unfolding of existence. From the first expansion to the faintest glow at the edge of infinity, time found its rhythm and its purpose. The universe, in motion and memory, had begun to dream itself into duration. The universe carries memory not in words or symbols, but in light. Every photon that drifts through space is a messenger from the past, an echo of the earliest vibrations of creation. Though the first fires of the cosmos faded billions of years ago, their resonance still hums softly across the fabric of existence. To listen to these echoes is to listen to time itself, the universe, remembering its own birth through the faintest of whispers. Astronomers who study the deep sky are not merely looking outward, they are looking backward into history written in radiation. Light takes time to travel, and the farther it has journeyed, the older it is when it arrives. To see a distant galaxy is to see it as it was billions of years ago, when its stars were young and its shape still forming. Every faint glow in the darkness is a preserved instant, frozen in light and carried across time like the lingering note of a cosmic symphony. The most ancient of these echoes comes from the first light ever released, the cosmic microwave background, still washing gently across all of space. But beyond that light, deeper still, lie subtler traces, patterns in the motion of galaxies, the distribution of matter, the faint distortions of spacetime itself. These are the fossils of creation, silent signatures that tell the story of the universe's first moments, how it expanded, how it cooled, how its structure began to form. Each observation adds a brushstroke to the portrait of the beginning. Through careful study of starlight, scientists can detect the abundance of hydrogen and helium, confirming the processes that occurred minutes after the Big Bang. By measuring the faint temperature differences across the microwave background, they uncover the fingerprints of quantum fluctuations magnified by inflation. Even the shapes of galaxies and the clustering of matter carry the imprint of the first gravitational ripples, the earliest rhythm of the cosmos. These echoes are faint but precise, as though the universe recorded its own formation in the language of physics. The curvature of space reveals how much matter and energy it once contained. The stretching of light tells how quickly it expanded. The background radiation shows that the early cosmos was astonishingly uniform, smooth enough for stability, but not so smooth that it remained featureless. The balance was perfect. A whisper of irregularity created everything that now exists. To listen to these echoes is to realize that the past has never truly vanished. It lives in the structure of the present, in every atom, every star, every pattern of light. When scientists observe distant galaxies, they are not merely studying objects, they are listening to time, speaking through them. The photons arriving at Earth tonight may have begun their journey before the sun was born, before our galaxy had fully formed, before there were planets to receive them. They are the universe's long-distance letters, written in light. The echoes also come in deeper tones, the ripples of gravity that move through space like waves through water. When massive objects such as black holes or neutron stars collide, they send out vibrations that distort spacetime itself. These gravitational waves travel unimpeded, carrying information from places light cannot escape. Though faint, they add new layers to the cosmic symphony, allowing humanity to hear, for the first time, the universe's rhythm in motion rather than merely its glow. Each detection of these ripples confirms that space is not empty, but alive, flexible, responsive, resonant. It can carry the memory of motion just as air carries the vibration of sound. Through these waves, scientists can trace events from billions of years ago, hearing the final throes of ancient stars and the merging of primordial black holes, remnants of the first generation of cosmic giants. The echoes of the first moments are not only in light but in the trembling of spacetime itself. The story told by these remnants is one of perfect continuity. From the first flash of radiation to the soft background glow and the subtle drift of galaxies, everything connects. The universe remembers its own becoming through the patterns it left behind. What we call observation is, in truth, communion, a dialogue with the ancient. When a telescope captures the faintest photon, it participates in the same flow that began at the dawn of time. And yet, these echoes are not static. They continue to evolve, stretching as space expands, fading as energy disperses. The more the universe grows, the softer its voice becomes. The afterglow of creation is dimming, but it has not disappeared. It remains quiet but eternal, like the residual warmth of a long-cooled ember. Every faint vibration, every scattered particle still carries information about the first seconds of existence. The cosmos has not forgotten, it simply speaks in frequencies too subtle for most to hear. If one could translate those signals into sound, the universe's past would not roar or thunder, it would murmur. A low, harmonic pulse, endless and soothing, the sound of expansion, of time breathing outward. It would be both familiar and infinite, the hum of life itself reflected across scales too large to comprehend. The echoes of the first moments are not reminders of something gone. They are proof that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. To gaze at the stars is to look into the mirror of the beginning. Each beam of light, each faint shimmer across the sky, is an echo that began long before thought, long before eyes to see it. The universe has been telling its story since the first second of time, and every night, in the quiet between the stars, that story continues to speak softly, endlessly, in the language of light. As the universe unfolded, it became a vast laboratory for its own laws. Every motion, every flicker of light, every collision of particles followed invisible rules that had existed since the first instant. Yet those rules were not revealed easily. It would take billions of years, and the rise of consciousness within the universe itself, for minds to begin uncovering the patterns written into its foundation. The cosmos had always been governed by order, but only through the language of mathematics could that order be read. Equations became humanity's way of listening to creation. They were not inventions but discoveries, reflections of truths that existed long before thought. Each formula describing gravity, motion, energy, or space was a window into the architecture of reality. Newton's laws captured the harmony of falling bodies and orbiting worlds, showing that the same force binding an apple to the Earth guided the moon around the planet and the planets around the Sunday. The simplicity of that realization was breathtaking. One law, infinite reach. Centuries later, Einstein extended that revelation. He saw that gravity was not merely a force, but a consequence of geometry, that mass and energy bend space and time themselves. The fabric of reality was flexible, curving under weight, rippling under motion. Planets followed the bends in that fabric, not pulled by unseen cords but guided by the very shape of space-time. The flow of time, the path of light, the dance of galaxies, all were expressions of this geometry. In a few lines of equations, the universe described itself. Yet even Einstein's brilliance could not capture everything. Beneath the grand scales of space and time lay another world, a realm of particles, uncertain and unpredictable. In this quantum domain, matter did not follow smooth curves, but moved in probabilities. Energy flickered between existence and absence, defying the classical rhythm of cause and effect. The equations of quantum mechanics described this strange behavior with astonishing accuracy, but their meaning remained elusive. They revealed a universe that was both ordered and indeterminate, predictable and mysterious. When these two great systems, relativity and quantum mechanics, were compared, they did not fit together. One governed the vast, the other the minuscule. Both were true, yet they spoke different dialects of the same cosmic language. The search to unite them became the central quest of modern physics, to find a single equation that could describe everything from the birth of the universe to the motion of an atom. It was a search not only for knowledge, but for unity, for the ultimate symmetry between the infinite and the infinitesimal. Mathematics became the bridge between imagination and existence. It allowed the human mind to travel where no senses could follow, into the first fractions of a second after the beginning, into the cores of black holes, into the farthest reaches of time. Through symbols and logic, reality became transparent, revealing its structure like a hidden melody brought into hearing. Each discovery was another verse in the poem the universe had been writing since it began. The equations themselves carried a strange beauty. They were concise, almost poetic, expressing vast truths with elegant simplicity. The equation E equals mxc2. E equals mxc2 contained within it the secret of transformation, the unity of mass and energy, the way the light of stars and the matter of planets are two forms of the same essence. Maxwell's equations describe the invisible waves of electricity and magnetism, showing that light itself is an oscillation of fields moving through space. Schrödinger's wave equation turned the motion of particles into music, each solution a note in the quantum symphony of being. Every scientific breakthrough deepened the mystery rather than diminished it. The more clearly the laws of nature were understood, the more profound the question became: why do these laws exist at all? Why should mathematics, a creation of thought, describe the universe so perfectly? It was as though reality itself were written in the same logic that the human mind had evolved to perceive. The equations were not merely tools, but reflections of something intrinsic to existence, a conversation between consciousness and the cosmos. Through them, time and space revealed their unity. Energy and matter showed their interchange. Even chaos began to express order through patterns and probabilities. The deeper the equations reached, the more the universe appeared self-consistent, an intricate design, unfolding with precision. Yet at the edges of that design, uncertainty remained. The origin of time, the nature of dark energy, the true behavior of gravity at quantum scales, all still lay beyond the reach of current understanding. The equations could describe much, but they could not yet explain the reason for the laws themselves. Perhaps that is part of the beauty. The universe reveals itself just enough to be known, but not enough to be conquered. Every equation that captures one mystery opens the door to another. The laws of physics are not boundaries, but invitations, reminders that knowledge is not the end of wonder, but its continuation. From equations to eternity, the story remains the same. The universe is intelligible, yet infinite. Its order is discernible, yet its meaning remains open. The same laws that shaped the first stars still govern the cells of living beings and the thoughts that question their origin. Mathematics is the quiet thread that connects the beginning to the now proof that the cosmos does not merely exist, but understands itself through those who seek to know it. To read the equations of the universe is to touch the eternal. Each symbol, each number, is a translation of the first pulse of existence, still echoing through time. In the silence of thought, when understanding meets awe, one can almost feel the rhythm that began in that first instant, a rhythm written not only in matter and light, but in the timeless language of truth. The universe that emerged from the Big Bang seems boundless, vast beyond imagining, yet defined by precise laws and delicate balances. Its constants, the strength of gravity, the speed of light, the charge of the electron, are tuned so precisely that even the smallest deviation could have prevented stars, atoms, or life from forming. To many who gaze deeply into the mathematics of existence, this precision suggests a haunting question: why these laws? Why this universe, and not another? It is within this question that one of the most daring ideas in modern cosmology arises: the possibility that ours is not the only universe. That beyond the edges of what we can see or ever hope to observe, other universes may exist, each with its own laws, its own realities, its own versions of time and matter. Together, they would form a vast ensemble, the multiverse, a sea of countless cosmic islands, each born from its own beginning. This idea is not born from imagination alone. It flows naturally from the equations that describe inflation, the great expansion that marked the universe's birth. Inflation, driven by a mysterious field of energy, may not have ended everywhere at once. In some regions, it could have stopped, forming universes like ours. In others, it might have continued, forever creating new bubbles of space, each sealed off from the rest. The result would be a cosmic landscape of infinite variety, a universe of universes, each one unique. In one universe, gravity might be stronger, stars would live shorter lives. In another, atoms might never form, the fabric of matter too unstable to persist. There could be universes filled with light but no structure, or others so dense they collapsed in an instant. Ours, balanced delicately between chaos and emptiness, would be just one note in an endless cosmic symphony. The multiverse, if real, would be the ultimate expression of possibility, a reality where everything that can exist does. The notion stretches comprehension. It challenges the boundaries of science, philosophy, and imagination. How could such universes be known if they are forever beyond reach? Their existence cannot be observed directly, for the very fabric of space that separates them also isolates them completely. Yet the mathematics that predicts them fits so perfectly with what is seen in our own cosmos that many believe their presence is more than speculation. It is inference, drawn from the structure of the laws themselves. Some see this multiplicity not as contradiction, but as completion. If the cosmos is infinite, then perhaps the emergence of countless realities is inevitable. Just as one star among billions does not diminish the beauty of any single one, so too might countless universes not diminish our own, but make it part of a greater whole. The multiverse becomes not an escape from meaning, but a deeper affirmation of it that existence is vast enough to hold every possibility, every dream. Others view it differently, as a mirror for the human longing to explain the improbable. The fine-tuning of the universe may tempt the mind to imagine alternatives, to ask whether randomness can account for perfection. Perhaps it can. Perhaps, in an infinite ensemble, even the rarest configurations, such as a universe where matter coheres, stars ignite, and consciousness arises, must occur somewhere, sometime. If infinite rolls of the cosmic dice are cast, one of them, inevitably, will come up as ours. Still, the idea carries a quiet poetry. If other universes exist, they are not distant places but parallel realities, coexisting beyond perception, layered like dimensions of a dream. Each would have its own flow of time, its own histories, perhaps even its own forms of awareness. There could be universes where no stars ever formed, and others where they burn in colors unknown to human eyes. Some may have expanded forever. Others may have collapsed and begun again. Each one would be a separate melody in an infinite composition. The multiverse concept reshapes not only cosmology but philosophy. It blurs the line between necessity and chance, between creation and inevitability. It suggests that reality is not a single outcome, but a spectrum, a field of possibilities realized all at once. The question of why the universe exists becomes more profound. Not why something rather than nothing, but why this something among the infinite sum, things that could be. There is, however, another way to see it, not as an endless number of separate worlds, but as one reality, expressing itself in infinite forms. Just as a tree grows countless leaves from a single root, the multiverse could be viewed as one great organism of existence, each universe a branch, each branch nourished by the same invisible source. In that sense, the multiverse is not chaos but continuity, the cosmos dreaming in many directions at once. Perhaps the human desire to understand the multiverse is itself a reflection of its nature. The mind, after all, is also a multiverse, an infinity of thoughts and perceptions coexisting, intersecting, and vanishing, each a tiny reality unto itself. The imagination that conceives of endless worlds may be the same process through which the universe conceives itself. In thinking about the multiverse, the cosmos wonders about its own reflection. If such a vast plurality of universes exists, ours is still miraculous. Its constants allow matter to form, stars to shine, and life to ask questions. Even if infinite worlds exist, this one with its blue oceans, its spiraling galaxies, its sentient beings remains unique in its unfolding. The multiverse does not diminish meaning, it magnifies it. Every universe, no matter how many there are, remains singular in its experience of existence. Whether the multiverse is real or merely an elegant hypothesis, its idea awakens something deep within the recognition that creation may be limitless and that reality may extend far beyond what even imagination can reach. It is both scientific theory and spiritual metaphor, the ultimate bridge between reason and wonder. The dream of many universes is, in a way, the universe's own dream, a reflection of its infinite potential, echoing quietly through eternity. From the moment of its birth, the universe has never stopped expanding. What began as an instant of unfathomable acceleration has continued without pause, carrying galaxies farther apart with each passing moment. The light that once filled every corner has stretched thinner and colder, its wavelengths lengthening as space itself swells. The cosmos is not growing into anything, it is growth itself, space unfolding from within, infinite and self-sustaining. At first, it was thought that gravity, the same force that shaped stars and galaxies, might someday slow this expansion. Astronomers once imagined a universe that would reach a grand pause, then contract, collapsing in a mirrored echo of its own beginning. But the more deeply the cosmos was measured, the clearer the truth became. The expansion is not slowing, it is accelerating. The galaxies are not merely drifting apart, they are fleeing from one another faster than before, propelled by a hidden influence that defies comprehension. This unseen energy, now called dark energy, makes up most of the universe. It cannot be detected directly, yet its effect is everywhere. It acts not as a push or a pull, but as a property of space itself, a quiet pressure that drives the expansion ever faster. Where gravity binds, dark energy releases. Where matter gathers, dark energy stretches the void between. The two forces are not in conflict. They are the dual heartbeat of the universe, contraction and expansion, tension and release, order and drift. As galaxies move apart, the spaces between them grow vast beyond imagination. The light from distant systems takes longer to reach others, and eventually it will take forever. There will come a time when each cluster of galaxies becomes an isolated island, its light unable to cross the widening gulf of space. From any point within such an island, the universe will appear to end just beyond the visible horizon. The great web that once connected everything will thin into solitude. Yet this is not a tragedy. It is the natural rhythm of cosmic evolution. The expansion is not destruction but transformation, the diffusion of energy into a wider and quieter state. Even as galaxies drift apart, each remains a complete world unto itself, rich with stars, planets, and mysteries. The universe, though growing colder, continues to create beauty in its motion. Its vastness is a form of serenity, a spreading calm that echoes the first moments of its birth. The acceleration of the expansion remains one of the greatest puzzles of modern cosmology. Why does space expand at all? What is dark energy made of? Some physicists describe it as the cosmological constant, an inherent energy of the vacuum, predicted long ago by Einstein and once dismissed as a mistake. Others imagine it as a dynamic field, slowly evolving, changing the universe's fate with time. Whatever its nature, dark energy has become the dominant force of existence, shaping not just the future of galaxies, but the destiny of time itself. The accelerating expansion changes the meaning of distance. Beyond a certain point, galaxies recede faster than light can travel. Their signals can never reach us. Their light, no matter how bright, becomes trapped behind the horizon of cosmic speed. These regions are not destroyed, they simply become unreachable, slipping beyond the realm of observation. The universe does not end at that boundary, our ability to see it does. Beyond that veil, creation continues, silent and unending. To look into the night sky is to look across this expansion. The starlight that reaches Earth tonight began its journey millions or even billions of years ago, from galaxies now much farther away than when the light first left them. We see the past, but we live in a future that is already accelerating away from what we see. Time and space, entwined in their endless motion, remind us that all perception is delayed, that the universe is always both here and already gone. As eons pass, the effects of dark energy will deepen. Galaxies not bound by mutual gravity will drift forever apart. The Milky Way and its neighboring Andromeda will merge into one grand spiral, but beyond their shared horizon, the rest of the universe will fade from view. The sky will darken. The great constellations will dissolve. Future beings, if any exist, may look upward and see only their local stars, unaware of the vast cosmos that once surrounded them. The story of expansion will continue, but fewer voices will remember its beginning, and yet, in a deeper sense, the universe will not be emptier, it will be more refined. Energy will continue to spread evenly through space, approaching equilibrium. The great distances will not signify loneliness but completion. The universe will have achieved what it began to seek: balance through dispersion, harmony through stillness. Expansion, at its heart, is not flight, it is the universe breathing out, filling the silence with possibility. There is peace in this endless growth. Every moment of existence, every spark of light, participates in the same unfolding. The galaxies do not resist the pull of expansion. They move with it effortlessly. Their journeys are not acts of separation, but expressions of continuity. The universe is one ocean of space and time, and every motion within it, from the orbit of a planet to the drift of galaxies, is a wave on its surface. To imagine the future of this expanding cosmos is to glimpse eternity in motion. There may be no end, no edge, no boundary where existence stops. Space will continue to stretch, carrying every photon, every particle, every echo outward into the infinite calm. The universe expands not because it must, but because expansion is its nature, a quiet unfolding, a perpetual awakening, a reminder that creation is not a moment in time but a state of being. The universe, for all its brilliance and complexity, carries within it a quiet law, one that governs the flow of time and the direction of all things. It is the law of entropy, the measure of disorder, the inevitable spreading of energy from concentrated forms into diffuse calm. From the very first moment of the Big Bang, entropy began its steady rise, guiding the cosmos toward equilibrium. Every star that burns, every atom that decays, every motion that ever was, feeds this gradual march toward stillness. Entropy is not destruction, though it often wears that face. It is balance, the equalizing breath of nature. It transforms structure into simplicity, heat into cold, motion into rest. In every reaction, a little energy slips away, not lost, but scattered. This is the true current of time, the one that cannot be reversed. While galaxies spin and stars ignite, entropy waits patiently, turning brilliance into faint glow, fire into memory. In the early universe, entropy was low. The cosmos was hot and dense, but perfectly ordered, a smooth expanse filled with uniform light. It was a simplicity that contained the potential for everything. As structure formed, as gravity gathered matter into stars and galaxies, entropy began to rise. The universe grew more complex, yet its overall balance moved toward disorder. The creation of form, paradoxically, increased entropy because each act of organization released heat, radiation, and energy into the expanding sea. Stars are the great engines of this process. Each one is a furnace of transformation, fusing hydrogen into heavier elements and releasing enormous energy. Their brilliance is the visible face of entropy at work. Every ray of starlight streaming through space is the product of energy dispersing, spreading from concentrated cores into the emptiness around them. Beauty, in this cosmic sense, is the byproduct of decline, the graceful conversion of order into harmony, structure into song. Over billions of years, this slow transformation continues. Stars age and die. Some collapse into dense remnants, neutron stars or black holes, while others scatter their material back into space, enriching it for future generations of stars. The cycle of creation and decay is unending, yet every iteration pushes the universe closer to equilibrium. With each passing epoch, there are fewer pockets of high energy, fewer chances for new stars to form. The night sky, which once blazed with light, will one day dim. There will come a time when all the hydrogen, the simplest and most abundant element, is spent. The galaxies will no longer shimmer with newborn stars. The great furnaces of fusion will go out, leaving behind only the cooling remnants of what once was. White dwarfs will fade to black, neutron stars will cool into silence, and even black holes will slowly evaporate, releasing their last whispers of energy into the void. The universe, in its vast patience, will fall into darkness, not abruptly, but gently, as if drifting into sleep. This final era is known as the heat death, though its name is misleading. It is not a fiery end, but a cooling one, a long surrender to equilibrium. There will be no more temperature differences, no more motion capable of doing work. The universe will reach a state of perfect balance, where energy is evenly spread and no further change can occur. Time, as it is experienced now, will lose meaning, for nothing will remain to mark its passage. Yet there is a strange peace in this vision. Entropy's long rise is not a tragedy, but a fulfillment. The universe, having burned with creation for eons, will finally rest. It will have achieved what every system in nature seeks: equilibrium, harmony, stillness. The heat death is not annihilation, it is completion. The story that began in radiant chaos will end in quiet symmetry. The mathematics of thermodynamics predicts this fate with precision, yet its poetry lies beyond numbers. In the same way that a note fades into silence after its echo fills a hall, the cosmos will one day release its last vibration. That silence will not be emptiness, but the lingering resonance of everything that came before: the memory of stars, the whisper of galaxies, the final glow of light stretched to infinity. Still, even in this far future, not everything may be lost. The quantum nature of reality allows for possibilities beyond simple decay. Tiny fluctuations may continue to ripple through the vacuum, brief sparks of energy flickering into being. Perhaps, through some unknown process, new universes might arise from this stillness, each beginning its own story, its own climb from simplicity to complexity. Entropy, then, would not be an ending, but a transition, the soft breath before a new awakening. From a human perspective, the thought of universal stillness feels cold and distant, yet, in the language of the cosmos, it is natural. Every life, every star, every motion contributes to this vast equilibrium. Entropy is the thread connecting all existence, the same process that turns fuel into warmth, motion into rest, order into beauty. It is the rhythm that underlies creation, the slow exhalation of the universe after its long, luminous song. When the last light fades and the final particle drifts into perfect quiet, the universe will not have failed. It will have completed its cycle, having transformed energy into experience, motion into memory. The long sleep that follows will not be absence but peace, the ultimate stillness of a cosmos that once burned with the brilliance of becoming and now rests in the gentle calm of being. The story of the universe, as it stretches towards stillness, invites a deeper question: can creation truly end? Is the long sleep of entropy the final word, or merely a transition, a pause before renewal? Nature, even in its smallest details, tends towards cycles. Stars are born from dust and return to dust. Energy flows and transforms but never truly disappears. Might the universe itself follow this same rhythm, an endless pulse of expansion, collapse, and rebirth? The idea of a reborn cosmos has haunted human thought for centuries. Ancient traditions imagined worlds that rise and fall like tides, creation emerging from the ashes of destruction. In modern physics, similar visions appear not in myth but in mathematics. Some cosmologists propose that our universe may not be a single, unbroken journey outward, but one cycle within an infinite chain, a breathing cosmos that expands, contracts, and expands again, forever rewriting itself in new forms. This concept, often called the cyclic or oscillating universe, envisions gravity as the counterbalance to expansion. Though the cosmos grows larger today, gravity's persistent pull could, in theory, one day slow it, halt it, and reverse it. If that reversal occurred, galaxies would begin to drift inward. The night sky, now receding, would brighten again as distant clusters drew nearer. The universe would warm as matter compressed, and eventually, everything would collapse into a single, dense point, not an end, but the seed of another beginning. That moment of ultimate convergence, the so-called Big Crunch, would mirror the Big Bang in reverse. Every atom, every photon, every trace of existence would be drawn together, the fabric of space folding in upon itself. Temperatures would soar, dimensions might twist, and the boundaries of time could blur. Then, as if by cosmic instinct, another expansion could follow, giving rise to a new universe born from the ashes of the old. The great cycle would continue, an eternal heartbeat of creation and renewal. Though no evidence yet confirms such a fate, the idea resonates deeply. It offers symmetry, a universe that balances its beginning with its end, that never truly fades but transforms. Some models even suggest that traces of previous universes could linger within the one we inhabit now, encoded in faint irregularities in the cosmic background radiation, subtle fingerprints from an earlier age of existence. If so, then our universe carries not only its own memory but the memory of its predecessors, a lineage written in the light itself. There are other possibilities, more mysterious still. Some theories propose that as black holes evaporate and release their final energy, the quantum fluctuations of empty space might ignite new universes, small, self-contained regions that pinch off from our own. In this vision, each collapse is not an ending but a branching. The death of one universe becomes the birth of many, each with its own physical laws and constants. Reality becomes a tree of endless regeneration, each leaf a cosmos unfolding its own story. Even within a universe doomed to expand forever, the notion of rebirth lingers. Though galaxies will drift apart and stars will fade, the quantum fabric of space never rests completely. Tiny fluctuations can give rise to new patches of inflation bubbles of spacetime that begin their own expansions, isolated from the rest. These new universes would bloom invisibly beyond our reach, their existence a continuation of the same creative force that ignited our own. The cosmos, it seems, refuses to be still. Philosophically, this vision of recurrence carries both humility and hope. It suggests that destruction is not failure, but transformation, that collapse is as essential to creation as birth itself. The same energy that once forged stars may someday fold into silence, only to ignite again in a new beginning. The great rhythm of expansion and contraction, of becoming and returning, may be the truest form of immortality the cosmos knows. In this endless breathing, time itself becomes circular. Every ending is a beginning observed from another angle. The universe becomes not a straight line, but a spiral, turning through eons without ever repeating exactly. Each new cycle would differ slightly, shaped by chance, by quantum variation, by the subtleties of entropy itself. Perfection would not be sameness, but continual renewal, a universe learning from itself through endless rebirths. To imagine such a cosmos is to feel both awe and comfort. The heat death, once seen as a final silence, becomes merely a transition to another note. The universe, rather than vanishing, would inhale again, drawing all its scattered fragments back into unity, only to exhale once more in radiant creation. The cycle would have no beginning and no end, only flow. Perhaps this rhythm mirrors something deeper, the pulse of existence itself. Stars, hearts, galaxies, even thoughts arise and fade in patterns of repetition. Every cycle carries within it both memory and evolution. The cosmos, through its infinite transformations, might be doing what all living things do, renewing itself through change, surviving through surrender. Even if the universe never collapses, even if expansion continues forever, the idea of cyclical renewal remains a metaphor for persistence. Creation is not a singular event, but an ongoing process energy, reshaping itself in endless ways. Whether through new universes budding from old, or through the quiet continuation of quantum motion, existence never truly stops. It shifts, transforms, and begins again. The rebirth of the cosmos, whether literal or symbolic, tells the same truth whispered since the beginning. Nothing is ever lost, only changed. The ashes of one creation become the soil for another. The collapse of stars births new light. The stillness of heat death gives rise to fresh beginnings. The universe is a phoenix made of space and time, eternally rising from its own fading glow. Every atom in the human body, every breath, every heartbeat, every thought carries a history older than Earth itself. The calcium in bones was forged in the hearts of ancient stars. The iron in blood was created in the last moments of stellar death, born in explosions that scattered their brilliance across the void. The oxygen we breathe and the carbon that shapes life were built from fusion, from fire that burned long before any world cooled enough to host it. The elements that make up all living things were not formed here. They were written into existence by the universe itself, in the furnaces of stars that lived and died billions of years ago. When those stars reached the end of their lives, they cast their substance into space, seeding it with the raw materials for worlds. From those ashes, new stars formed, surrounded by disks of gas and dust that coalesced into planets. Among those planets, one would cool just enough to nurture oceans, chemistry, and thought. It is not poetic exaggeration but scientific truth to say that we are made of starlight. The hydrogen that fuels the body's water was born in the first seconds after the Big Bang. The heavier elements that form the body's structure were created through countless generations of stellar life and death. Each cell, each molecule, is an echo of cosmic evolution, the universe remembering its own beginning through us. This inheritance is not just physical, it is temporal. The atoms composing the human form have traveled through nearly 14 billion years of transformation. They were once part of a glowing cloud, then part of a star, then scattered dust drifting in the dark, before joining again to form life. Every human being is a story the universe tells itself, an unbroken line of connection stretching from the first light to the present moment. The journey of that light is still visible in the night sky. The stars above are not separate from the observer below, they are kin. Their radiance is the same energy that once filled the universe at its birth, now transformed, refined, and refracted through time. When one gazes upward, the photons that touch the eye are not just distant, they are ancient, some having travelled for millions of years to arrive. In that moment of contact, past and present become one, and the boundary between the observer and the cosmos dissolves. Stars, in their quiet labour, have always been alchemists of existence. Their fusion creates diversity from simplicity, unity breaking into form. Hydrogen and helium, born from the Big Bang, were too pure, too simple to create the richness of worlds. Through the steady rhythm of stellar burning, the universe learned to write complexity into itself. Life became possible not as an accident, but as an outcome of this patient artistry. The death of stars is not an ending, but a continuation. Supernovae, those magnificent cosmic detonations, spread the elements necessary for planets and life across the galaxy. The remnants of those explosions drifted for eons, gathering under gravity's pull, combining and cooling until they became the substance of new worlds. The cycle of stellar life is the universe's way of teaching continuity, that creation and destruction are merely different phases of the same movement. The Sun, too, carries this legacy. It is a second or third generation star, born from the remnants of those that came before. Around it, the debris of ancient starlight formed the Earth a planet rich in the elements of memory. From that dust rose oceans and mountains, air and flame, and eventually, beings who could look back at the stars and recognize themselves in them. The spark that animates consciousness is not separate from the fire of the cosmos. It is an extension of it. To say that life is made of starlight is also to say that it carries purpose in its structure. The atoms that once existed in silence have now learned to question their origin. Through the rise of awareness, the universe contemplates its own beginning. The carbon in the human mind has become capable of wonder. The hydrogen that once streamed freely through the early universe now moves through veins, feeds thought, creates memory. In each person, the cosmos awakens to itself. Every moment of existence, every act of perception, is a continuation of that first luminous event. The Big Bang was not a past occurrence, but an ongoing reality. Its energy still expands through everything. The light of creation flows through every living being, transformed into warmth, motion, and thought. When a person speaks, breathes, or dreams, they are participating in the same physics that governs the movement of galaxies. This unity between life and cosmos reveals an extraordinary symmetry. The smallest and the largest, the microscopic and the infinite, are bound by the same laws. The same equations that describe the motion of planets also describe the flow of blood. The same thermodynamics that govern the life of a star guide, the metabolism of a cell. Nature's language is universal, and everything that exists from the smallest quark to the vastest cluster speaks it fluently. Even emotion, the inner heat of being, may be seen as a reflection of that first fire. The warmth of compassion, the spark of curiosity, the radiance of love, all are echoes of the same energy that illuminated the cosmos at its birth. In feeling, the universe remembers what it once was: pure energy, pure motion, pure potential. Human life is not separate from that unfolding. It is the conscious continuation of it. When one looks at a star, the light entering the eye may have left its source before the first humans existed. And yet, it arrives here, now, completing a journey across time to be witnessed. That encounter between ancient light and present awareness is a reunion. It is the cosmos recognizing itself. We are, in the truest sense, children of the first light fragments of the universe made conscious pieces of eternity, momentarily aware of their own origin. And when the light of life fades, it will return to the same cycle, dispersing into the fabric of space, waiting once again to rise in new forms. The stars that once gave us being will one day reclaim us, turning our atoms into fuel for another generation of suns. Thus, the story continues, light becoming life, and life returning to light. There comes a moment, after all the expansion, after the great symphony of light and structure, when silence becomes the universe's dominant language, not the silence of nothingness, but the vast quiet that follows creation's crescendo, a stillness so deep that it seems to hum with memory. It is within this silence that humanity finds itself, a small consciousness listening to the echoes of eternity, hearing, in the absence of sound, the presence of everything. The universe speaks softly now. Its voice is not in thunder or flame, but in the faint vibrations that ripple through space. Telescopes tuned to invisible wavelengths capture whispers that the human ear cannot hear. The background radiation of the Big Bang, the slow spin of pulsars, the faint sigh of galaxies drifting away. These signals are the language of the cosmos, messages not written in words, but in waves, frequencies, and light. To listen is to remember. Every scientific instrument ever built, every radio dish, space observatory, and detector buried deep underground is an ear pressed against the infinite. They do not listen for noise, they listen for pattern. The hiss of cosmic radiation, the flicker of a quasar, the tremor of a gravitational wave, these are the universe's heartbeat, still pulsing through the darkness. Even the emptiest regions of space are not silent. They resonate faintly with the quantum tremors of creation itself. To hear the cosmos is to learn patience. Light from the most distant galaxies travels for billions of years before reaching an observer. By the time it arrives, the source may no longer exist. Every photon captured by a telescope is a relic, a letter written in the first language, the language of energy and time. Listening to the universe means listening to the past, to the first breaths of matter, to the quiet that followed the fire. There is something profoundly human in this act. To seek the faintest signals in the cosmic noise is to search not only for knowledge, but for connection. The silence between galaxies mirrors the silence within thought, that inner expanse where questions form and dissolve. The astronomer waiting for a signal from a distant star is no different from the poet waiting for a word to arrive. Both are acts of listening, of surrendering to something greater than oneself. The universe's silence is not empty. It holds the subtle rhythm of everything that has ever been. Within that quiet rests the echo of every star that ever burned, every particle that ever collided, every gravitational wave that ever rippled through space-time. If one could translate this silence into sound, it would be a low, endless tone, deeper than any instrument could produce, the hum of existence itself, serene and eternal. In the stillness of space, even motion becomes a kind of sound. The slow orbit of a planet around its star, the drift of a galaxy across the void, the expansion of space between clusters, all are parts of a greater harmony. The cosmos is not mute, it is resonant. Its silence is not absence, but order, a vast, subtle music, where each vibration, no matter how faint, contributes to the whole. Gravitational wave observatories like LIGO and Virgo have already begun to translate some of that silent music into audible form. When two black holes collide, the resulting ripple through space-time can be recorded and played as sound, a brief, low chirp, rising and fading like a breath. That single tone carries across billions of years, through distances so great that words lose meaning. In that fleeting vibration, the universe sings of its own motion. But not all listening requires machines. There is another kind, the quiet listening of awareness. Standing beneath the night sky, feeling the weight of light years overhead, one can sense the same stillness that pervades all things. The human mind, small and finite, is nonetheless tuned to the same cosmic frequency. To look up and feel wonder is to resonate with the universe's silence, to become part of it. This silence is sacred, not because it is solemn, but because it is whole. It carries no judgment, no division. It accepts everything, every sound, every motion, every passing of time, and transforms it into stillness. Even chaos becomes calm when viewed from the scale of eternity. The violence of supernovae, the collapse of black holes, the expansion of galaxies all fade into the same serenity when heard from far enough away. For billions of years, this quiet has deepened. As the universe expands, sound itself becomes rarer. The interstellar gas that once carried waves of vibration thins into near nothingness. Eventually, even the last signals will stretch too long to detect. The cosmic symphony will drift beyond hearing, leaving only the silent hum of empty space. But that silence will not mean loss. It will be the completion of a song, the pause at the end of an infinite melody. To listen to the cosmic silence is to listen to the self, for the atoms that make the ear, the brain, and the heart are born of the same origin as the stars. The quiet between galaxies is mirrored in the quiet within each breath. When one becomes still enough, the boundary between inner and outer dissolves, and what remains is a single awareness, the universe hearing itself. In the end, silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of meaning. It is the purest form of communication between existence and awareness. The cosmos speaks in stillness, and those who listen carefully enough will hear what it has always been saying, that creation and calm are the same, that light and silence are one, and that the story of everything has always been, and will always be, a song too vast for words. Every story humanity tells begins with something, a place, a spark, a cause. But the story of the universe begins with a silence so deep that even cause itself had not yet been born. To speak of before the Big Bang is to step beyond time, into a realm where language falters and imagination trembles. There was no before, and yet the mind cannot resist asking, what gave rise to the moment when existence began to breathe? In the classical picture, time and space began together. The Big Bang was not an explosion in pre-existing emptiness. It was the creation of emptiness itself. Asking what came before is like asking what lies north of the North Pole. The question dissolves as it reaches the edge of meaning. But even knowing this, the human spirit persists in wondering. It is an instinct woven into consciousness, the same instinct that once lifted eyes toward the stars. Some physicists imagine that the universe did not emerge from absolute nothingness, but from a deeper kind of reality, a quantum sea where fluctuations constantly appear and vanish. In this timeless field, a small ripple could expand into a universe, just as a tiny vibration of energy ignited our own. In this view, the Big Bang was not creation from nothing, but transformation, a shift from potential to presence, from silence to sound. Others envision an eternal cosmos that renews itself endlessly. Each expansion may be followed by contraction, each universe giving rise to the next. If this is true, then before has no meaning, because there was never a first beginning. The cosmos would be a cycle without origin, a wheel turning forever, with each rotation erasing and remaking the memory of the last. And yet, even if the universe has no ultimate start, the question of its source remains. Why does the fabric of reality exist at all? Why are there laws that govern it? Energy that fills it? Awareness that perceives it? Science can describe the unfolding of events after time began, but the spark that set the rules in motion lies beyond the equations. Perhaps the origin is not a moment to be measured, but a mystery to be felt, something that transcends observation and dwells at the boundary of thought. Some thinkers suggest that the universe may arise naturally from mathematics itself. Equations, once written, describe existence whether or not they are realized. Perhaps reality is what it looks like when mathematics becomes self-aware, when possibility insists upon expression. Others imagine consciousness as fundamental, that awareness, not matter, gives rise to the cosmos. In such a view, the universe might be the dream of awareness exploring its own potential, expanding outward to discover itself in endless forms. Whatever its nature, the origin of existence humbles every intellect. It asks not only, what began it, but why does there need to be beginning at all? The simplest assumption might be that there is no cause, that existence simply is eternal, self-sustaining, beyond reason. Yet even that simplicity feels profound, as though nothingness itself refused to remain empty. Perhaps creation was not a choice, but inevitability, the universe's way of being the only thing it could ever be, something rather than nothing. There is beauty in that inevitability. It means that existence does not need permission to be. The laws of physics do not require a stage to stand upon. They are the stage. Space and time are not built within anything larger. They are the context of all things. The Big Bang was not an event within a greater reality. It was reality awakening to itself. The cosmos was not created. It became aware. And yet, for all its elegance, this realization leaves one silent. The human mind, born within time, cannot truly grasp what it means for time itself to begin. Words fail at the edge of the infinite. Every metaphor, seed, spark, birth, awakening gestures toward truth but never captures it. The mystery of before remains not a riddle to be solved but a presence to be felt, like the quiet before music begins. Perhaps the reason this question haunts thought so deeply is because it mirrors something within. Just as the universe awakens from stillness, so too does consciousness arise from silence, each thought emerging from a void that cannot be measured. To ask what came before the universe is to ask what comes before awareness itself. The mystery of before is both cosmic and intimate. The same threshold crossed each time a new idea, a new life, a new breath begins. The universe may not remember its own birth, but its memory lives within its motion. Every star that burns, every atom that vibrates, every living being that asks why, all are echoes of that first awakening. The question of before, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable, is not a failure of understanding but an invitation. It calls the mind to humility, to wonder, to stillness. And in that stillness, perhaps the answer is already present, not as a statement but as a feeling. The universe exists because it must, because existence is its nature. Before the first light, before the first breath, there was the potential for everything. And in one timeless moment, that potential became real, and the silence of before became the song of being. In the end, or perhaps at the beginning again, the universe is not merely a collection of stars and forces. It is a dream, vast and self-aware, unfolding slowly through matter and motion, through time and thought. From the first flicker of existence to the faintest whisper of entropy, it has been a single, continuous act of becoming. Every particle, every pulse of light, every life that has ever lived is part of this dream, the cosmos awakening to itself. The earliest vibrations of energy, born from the silence of the beginning, never truly vanished. They transformed, softened, stretched into galaxies, stars, and worlds. Within those worlds, the atoms once forged in cosmic fire gathered into new patterns, rivers, mountains, clouds, and eventually, living beings capable of reflection. Through them, the universe found a way to see itself, to feel, to question. In their awareness, the cosmos achieved consciousness. The story of creation is not one of separation but of return. From unity came multiplicity, from simplicity came form, and now, through the eyes of life, unity remembers itself again. When a human being looks at the stars, the light they see is their own origin staring back. The atoms of their body and the photons of that distant glow were once one and the same, intertwined in the earliest moments of being. The act of looking is therefore an act of reunion. The universe gazing at itself across the gulf of time, the awareness that perceives the cosmos is not something apart from it. It is its continuation, its flowering. Every thought, every perception, every heartbeat is the echo of ancient physics energy reorganized into consciousness. Life, in this view, is not accidental. It is the inevitable outcome of a universe that longs to know what it is. Matter, left alone long enough, learns to think. The same equations that govern the birth of stars also govern the firing of neurons. The same rhythms that shape galaxies resonate within the mind that contemplates them. Perhaps this is what existence has been striving toward, not expansion or permanence, but understanding. Awareness is the final stage of creation, the moment when the universe becomes self-reflective. And yet, this reflection is not an end. It is a new kind of motion, an internal awakening. When consciousness arose, the cosmos began to dream consciously, a vast intelligence, learning to see itself through countless eyes. Each being, each world, each thought is a fragment of that greater awareness. The universe does not dream as one mind, but as many, scattered across time and space. Through every consciousness, it explores new possibilities, new perspectives of itself. It dreams of color through the eyes of creatures, of motion through the flight of stars, of meaning through the questions of humanity. The dream is endless, because awareness is endless. Each moment of realization gives rise to another, like ripples spreading through an infinite sea. The silence that once preceded creation has not disappeared. It remains beneath everything, the still background against which all movement occurs. To meditate, to listen deeply, is to return to that silence, to the original stillness that underlies being. In such quiet moments, One can sense the same calm that existed before time, not emptiness, but fullness waiting to be expressed. The silence and the dream are not opposites. They are the inhale and exhale of the same eternal breath. Even as the universe continues to expand, even as stars live and die, that breath goes on. The cosmos may cool and fade, but awareness persists, whether in new universes, new forms, or in the quiet continuity of existence itself. The laws of physics describe motion and decay, but within them lies the potential for renewal. Energy never vanishes, it transforms. Light becomes life, life becomes memory, memory becomes silence, and from silence, light returns again. To understand this is to feel the unity of all things. Every distant galaxy, every atom of air, every spark of thought is part of a single, continuous flow, the same river that began at the birth of time. The universe dreams not in words but in relationships, the pull of gravity, the dance of particles, the tenderness of perception. Each connection is a thread in the great tapestry of being, and through it, the dream continues to unfold. There may never be final answers to the deepest questions: what began existence, why it is, or whether it ends. But perhaps the questions themselves are the point. The act of wondering is the universe thinking aloud, reaching beyond itself, awakening further through curiosity. The mystery is not something to be solved, it is something to be experienced, lived, and felt. The universe dreams itself awake through us, through every mind that pauses to reflect on its own impermanence and beauty. When one looks at the night sky and feels awe, that feeling is not separate from the stars. It is the stars, expressed in consciousness. The light that left them billions of years ago has completed its journey not merely in the eye, but in awareness itself. The dream of existence, once unconscious, has become self-aware. And in that realization, something profound happens. The distance between origin and observer disappears. Time folds, and the beginning and the now become one. The cosmos is no longer something outside, but something within a single pulse of creation continuing to unfold, forever awake, forever dreaming. In this way, the story returns to where it began. Out of silence came light, out of light came form, out of form came awareness. And out of awareness comes wonder, the same wonder that now gazes into the night and whispers to the stars, "I remember you." Now the story softens, as all stories do. The light that once flared from the beginning cools into calm radiance, the music of expansion quieting to a low, eternal hum. The galaxies drift farther apart, but they do not feel lonely. They move as embers do, fading not in sorrow, but in grace. The universe breathes more slowly now. Its rhythm is vast, unhurried. The same stillness that existed before the first spark has returned, not as absence, but as fulfillment. Every photon that has ever shone, every atom that has ever lived, every thought that has ever been dreamed, still lingers here, woven into the invisible fabric of the night. Nothing is lost. Everything has simply changed its form. To rest within this silence is to join the oldest rhythm, to feel the same tranquility that once surrounded the first atoms when they formed from cooling fire. The stars may fade, but the light that made them continues, scattered and infinite, shining quietly in the dark spaces between worlds. It is the same light that lives within every being, the same calm that hums beneath the pulse of existence. Let the breath slow. Let the thoughts drift outward like galaxies through the dark. The universe has no edges, no walls, only a horizon where time softens into stillness. You are not separate from that calm. You are part of it, a single shimmer in the ocean of everything. Somewhere, a distant star exhales its final light, and that light becomes your dream. The cosmos folds itself into rest, and within that rest lies peace, a peace older than sound, older than time, older than memory. Sleep now, beneath the quiet of eternity. The universe is still here, watching, breathing, dreaming itself awake again. End of script. Sweet dreams.